What is happening, guys? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. I hope you guys are doing spectacular. I hope the sun is shining down on you. And I hope you guys are just going to have yourself a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day. And I hope that nothing but blessings and good things come your way. And if not, well, then just take it as a trial. Take it as one of those days where life is going to throw something challenging at you, where it's going to force you to develop your character. Because, hey, you know what? It's bound to happen. But those situations are also what makes us strong. It's also what makes us men, right? And that's kind of what we talked about today. And I was blessed in having Kimron Gilbert, on the show again. Well, I was a guest on his show, but the subjects that we talked about are still relevant to the Masculine Health Solutions and all I'm trying to do here and shedding light on good, positive masculinity. So we talked about what it's like to be a man, things that define manhood. And, for a little while, I was kind of like, shoot, man, what are those 3 core principles? And for me, when it comes to being a dude, you got to focus on progression in whatever endeavor it may be that you are pursuing in this thing called life. The other thing is to provide. Are you providing for society, providing for yourself, not being, not holding society back. You don't want to be like a backpack full of freaking sand on society. You don't want to do that. You want to be the guy pushing things along, right? So that's why I think it's important to provide for yourself, for the people around you. And, it's one of those things. It's your responsibility as a dude, as a man, right? And the other one is obviously to protect. If there's somebody in distress, it's you as a man with the balls in the situation to handle your business, right? Whether it's to step up for those who cannot speak for themselves, right? There's a kid in need, woman in need. Guess what, bucko? It's up to you. It's just one of those things that, a lot of us already feel that inside of us. However, these core principles and these values at times have been stifled down. Like, no, you know what? You shouldn't say anything. You're mansplaining. All that madness. But so we talked about what all these things really entail, went into detail, talked about it, attachments, detachments, all these different things, brought up fatherhood, inciting incidents that really spurred me into my manhood, I guess, so to speak, rites of passage, all that good stuff. So without any further ado, let's jump on in onto today's episode where I was a guest on Kimron's podcast, but we can still listen to it here. I've also attached the YouTube video in the description below if you guys do want to watch it. And, I've had a couple guys reach out to me and say that they do want to watch it video format. So let me know if you do, DM me. And again, just keep shooting me messages. I'm going to do more as far as the MHSQ questionnaires kind of go. And a lot of guys have been reaching out. I got a whole bunch of episodes lined up. I know it's been kind of slow, been rearranging some different things, getting a new computer and all that jazz. So, more than anything, I got it for the video editing software. So look for that coming out soon as well. With that being said, let's jump into today's episode. And again, DM me, or if you guys got any more questions, be sure to hit me up. IG, masculinehealthsolutions.com. You guys know where to find me. Let's jump on into today's episode with Kimron Gilbert. Looking to get started in PE? Check out the masculinehealthsolutions.com ebook available now, titled How to Get a Bigger Penis. All right, so all you guys looking to make gains in the male enhancement, penis enlargement, penis enhancement realm, this book is for you. And if you're a beginner, this is just the book you may have been looking for. So be sure to check it out at masculinehealthsolutions.com. The link is in the description below. Again, the book is titled How to Make Your Penis Bigger, and it will offer you all the knowledge and know-how that you need to get started on your PE journey. All right, without any further ado, let's jump on in.
Guys, welcome back to my channel. Today, I have a special guest that I want to put onto the podcast and kind of make it a bit visual. I always do a podcast version and the audio, but I think this deserves a visual. It's someone I've spoken to before, someone who's in the same space as me, got great ideas, great insights. We've had a topical conversation. I just thought, you know what, this is a great opportunity to share some stuff, and I just want to bring him into the space, introduce him to you guys, and get cracking. So, Conrado, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, sir. What is going on, Kimron? What is going on to your audience? More than anything, I'm a personal trainer. Granted, I do help people with male enhancement. I kind of went down that rabbit hole and realized how much BS was involved in that. And then through my own failures, I'm like, hey, you know what? There's a lot of truth in this too. And ironically, I started looking at spirituality, started looking at all these different things and just looking for health solutions for men. So I kind of made a podcast called Masculine Health Solutions where, I want to touch on everything, the spiritual side of like what we should be doing as guys, fatherhood, brotherhood, all that kind of stuff. And just really go down these rabbit holes and, talk to people like yourself, Kimron, guys who got insight on different ways to be successful, but more than anything, just kind of navigate through these murky seas of life and try to figure it out as guys. So that's where I'm at, and that's what I do now. And honestly, that's my focal point, man. That's what I do. Help people get in shape mentally, spiritually, and physically, I hope.
You know what? No, absolutely, dude. I think we're missing a lot of that because the women's space at the moment is full of self-love gurus, yoga teachers, women's empowerment, women's not women's rights, but the fact of taking one's ownership into themselves. And I feel in our space there is a convex or converse reaction to that, whereas a lot of men are getting a bit guarded, with the whole women's movements. They don't know how to navigate the women being empowered to their needs, and they feel like they're being, they're being emasculated per se, by today's society. And a lot of men, I feel, don't seem to understand themselves and therefore are putting that back into the world. And it's kind of, say, toxic. It's kind of not helping us to really understand who we are, but most importantly, understand how we fix ourselves into the world and how we have our process. I'm curious though, right? There's a couple of subjects I want to talk about. And primarily, like I mentioned, I really want to get into the awareness section of us, in terms of men being aware of who we are. So I think a lot of us don't even know like what we like, who we are, what interests us, what our purpose is. We seem very, very reactive nowadays. Right? Something happens, we're all over the place, and we lose our shit, and then we get angry with the world, then we get red pilled, right? Yeah. Then we get divorced, and then we go big time. It's like there isn't a balance to enable us to rebound after a bad relationship or rebound after trauma, and then find our center. Like, what was your experience, man, from going from something traumatic to then getting back your center and so forth?
Well, for me, I guess the first traumatic experience was like, okay, let's say you get your ass kicked a lot as a kid. That was me, right? I guess you could relate, Caribbean parents and all that, right? So, but, for me, obviously, it was a little bit over the top. But the one thing that I will say I took from it was that as a young kid, I don't know why, but I just told myself, you know what? I'm going to be 6 foot, 220 pounds, so nobody can fuck with me anymore. That was my goal. And that was kind of like, and it was weird because I reflected on that and I was just like, that's kind of a weird thought to have as a 6-year-old kid, right? But sure enough, it kind of taught me the importance of having a focal point, because at 15, I reached that goal. But it also taught me something else, like, now what, and that's kind of where you have to keep growing and you have to keep like the law of expansion, right? It's one of those universal laws that just kind of exists, that you always got to be striving for something more. But then the second time where I could say, I really, I guess life just kind of hit me in the face was, I think, having my kids, man. Like the first time, I'm not going to lie, my wife can probably attest to it. I wasn't as mature as I should have been, But the second time, we went through some difficulties in that with my son, and it really put things into perspective about what really matters and what doesn't. And I think as a man too, like, because our doctor was saying like, oh, you should abort. And I'm like, you know what, man, this doctor, no, man, like, I don't think we should. Like, if I really believe there's a God out there, then who is this guy to tell me this is the way I should go about doing this, right? And I know we live in this day and age where it's like, my body, I'm like, that's fine. You can do whatever you want with your body. However, there will always be consequences. And that was one of the things where I'm like, you know what? I told my wife, like, let's just try, and then we'll go from there. And ironically, it was almost like, the floodgates just opened up and everything just started to work out miraculously, right? But I think as a man, it really made me like, that's kind of where I feel like I really took on the role, like as father, like it's almost like 100% committed. Like it just changed my perspective, I guess. And I think for a lot of guys too, it's almost like, I think kids are almost like it's almost like the biggest way to learn this life because it forces you to like look at yourself and be like, hey, you got a lot of defects, right? That's when I started to realize,
Right.
like, man, like there's a lot of things I got to, I'm not perfect by any means. You can ask my wife, she'll probably be like, she'll probably make you a list a mile long. But at the same time, it does teach you as a man, like, this is where you need to step up. You gotta, hold it down financially. You got to be there when your kids are in trouble. You got to be there when your kids are scared. You got to be there when, your wife needs support. You got to figure all these things out. And it's almost like, unless you're able to look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, you know what, I got to work on myself. And I, as a man, if I, not associate as a man, because that's something that I feel like is so flimsy these days. Like, if you're going to be a real dude in this time, it's like, you know what, you're down for your family for by whatever means necessary. However,
Gotcha.
you're willing to sacrifice whatever it takes, right? And for me, that's kind of been the most grounding thing, I think, right? Where it's like fatherhood really teaches you what it takes to be a real man, not this,
Right.
new age video game playing, like none of
Is
that,
that a real man though? I want to catch up on this, right? Because this is where I think it gets really, really interesting for us, especially in the space that we're in, where we're trying to help people elevate. And they're like, well, why how can you help me? I'm a man. I stand up and I pee. That makes me a man, right? I can be aggressive. That makes me a man, right? I can have sex with a girl. Makes me a man. So I'm curious, right? Because whenever I do anything, I always like to get our definition of real
Mhm.
man. Because some women sometimes they're like, just be a man. I've had many girlfriends back and they said to me, be a man, step up. I'm like, what do you know about being a man? What do
Exactly.
you know? What do you know about? So when you say being a man, because obviously you talked when you were 16, you had this thing at 6, and then when you're 16, you achieved that goal of being so physically overbearing that you're
Hmm.
protecting yourself, right?
Yeah.
But obviously having your children is giving you the more emotional maturity to protect yourself. So I'm just curious, when you say real man, what's your definition of it versus what you think the world think a real man is?
I think a real man is just the guy that's always willing to do whatever it takes in the right situations, and isn't scared of the repercussions. It's almost like you got to be that dude who's a free thinking guy. Like, not so much the whole alpha omega, like none of those archetypes, I guess. It's more like you're a free thinker that's willing to do what you want in a way that doesn't hurt anybody. And you're not really
Yeah.
scared of what anybody's going to say. And you're always there to, I think for manhood, I guess, like, if I could boil it back down a little bit, like, as to some of the most important factors is, your growth, because you got to keep growing, right? Like, that's one of the things that a man's got to keep growing, keep developing himself. And the other thing is just like, how am I making this world a better place? And I think it's almost,
Right.
you got to develop that selflessness through life, man. Like, there's no other way around it. I kind of feel like experiences just kind of kick your ass, and then you figure out, like, okay, man, like, what am I doing here, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I kind of feel like that selflessness is like, okay, how do you develop that too? So it's almost, you got to have that growth. You got to be selfless, but at the same time, know when to hold it down. Like, you just got to be like, hey, you know what? I got to protect my own, protect, provide, and progress. Those are the three that I was looking
Progress.
for.
Those P's, three
There you
P's.
go. Yeah, I'm like, I knew it was in my mind somewhere,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I kind of feel like those are the three cornerstone kind of like ideals to what it takes
Gotcha.
to be a real man, right? Like, are you always progressing? Are you always developing yourself? And are you providing, right? Providing for your family, for society? How are you making this world a better place, right?
Right,
And then
right.
protection is kind of like, bro, like, hey, they're gonna look at you if something happens. Somebody breaks in here, like, they're not gonna go run to mom.
Right, I got you. I got you. Yeah, yeah. I'm curious though this, yeah, because I want to touch on the awareness element, something that I've recently gone through myself and had some insights in. But obviously, talking about the 3 Ps, right? That comes after you become aware of the lack of something, like something traumatic
Yeah.
might have happened to you that makes you think, oh shit, god damn, I'm not as happy as I thought, or I don't have enough money as I thought, or I'm not stable as I thought. Like something has to happen. Like the 3 biggest teachers, broke relationships and failure, right?
Yeah.
So one of those has to kick you in your ass. When it kicks you in your ass, you're like, wait, okay. But the thing is, how many people are broke and they're like, oh, life sucks, man. I can't get a job. The world hates me because I'm black, or I come from a poor background. My parents didn't have good money management. They didn't save money for me, and then the fear of failure, right? So they tried something, they failed. Oh, it wasn't for me. Oh, it can't work. I don't have this skill. And then heartbreaks. How many people and I know
Yep.
are attracting the same person, then be like, It's her fault. It's her fault, right? She's taking my money. It's her fault, right?
Yeah.
So you have these three teachers, but they're all lacking one fundamental thing, which is awareness. So I
Hmm.
believe for us to even start to have the three P's, understand the things that we have, is awareness. So you
Yeah.
became aware, but it took you a while
Yeah, it did.
to develop the ability, the skill to just be aware what the hell's going on and stop having the same problems with new faces.
Exactly. But the other thing I had to step away from too is the victim mindset. You
Right.
gotta like, and that's kind of like the one thing like I'm really working on with my son as well, because I see, I guess, some of that reflecting back at me, but that's kind of the way I was at it as a kid as well, right? So it's one of those things that I think, especially in this day and age, society is always kind of trying to out victim everybody, right? Like, no, man, I really suffered. I was a black lesbian transgender, I was a refugee and I really suffered, and it's almost like
Yeah,
now people are just
yeah,
they're just adding as many taglines as they can to like, this is
yep,
why the world owes me. And I'm like,
yep,
you got to come to the realization that nobody's coming to save you, man. That's kind of what I see more than anything around me with that I want to just communicate to guys and just everybody in
yep.
general, like females, guys, everybody. It's like, you know what? It doesn't matter. Nobody cares about the fact that you're a victim. What are you going to do now? You could take that anger, you could
Mm,
take that pain, transmute it, and use it for something good, right? Or you could just sit there and wallow in self-pity. But a lot of people, I mean, it kind of goes back to that whole concept of they're unconsciously incompetent. They don't know what they don't know. And if you don't know what you don't know, good luck going anywhere else, because that's all you know. That hole, that woe is me, the self-pity. It's almost like you got to come across somebody or something that's going to inspire you, whether it's a book, whether it's an experience. And to me, it's almost like one of the things that I think is huge is almost like giving back, because then you're able to reflect a little bit more, right? It's like, you know what, you're able to help out somebody that's got a little bit less than you. It really makes you value the things you have, and it makes you want to
yeah,
progress, because if you do, right, then you're able to help more people. And I think that that's completely relevant. Like, it all ties in, man. Like, everything's connected. We are all connected, whether it's spirituality, the whole holistic approach, man, like all that energy. And I think we become too attached to the things of this world, not knowing that we are not really of this world. I really buy into the whole, like, you know what, we're metaphysical beings having a physical experience. And the
yep.
older I get, the more I'm like, you know what, this vessel that I have, I've worked really hard to make it a certain way. However, when I die, I can't take it with me, man.
Can't
You
take
know?
it with you. Yep. It's funny you say that, It's funny you say, I still can't, but it's funny you say that about attachments, because I'm just curious though, because we all have accumulated knowledge, right? From our past experience growing up and whatever, whatever. But our accumulated knowledge sometimes gets us in trouble. So like when you talk about an attachment, like why do you think we attach? And then what do you think, what's the best way then for us to unattach ourselves from the earthly worldly things that we currently attach to?
think the reason why so many of us feel attached to whatever it is that we have, whether it be materialistic things that we have, or let's say from a vanity perspective, your beauty, whatever it may be, I think a lot of people, including myself to a degree, we attach that to our identity.
Mm,
And it wasn't until I don't remember what I was like watching or listening to, man, or what I was reading, but it was basically saying that like your identity is almost like it's your ego, right? So you're just trying to protect this thing that doesn't really exist. It's what you project into this world. And your ego is basically you taking in the information of how you perceive others to perceive you. So it's almost like I got to have a certain amount of money. I got to do this. I got to do that. And that way society will look at me as being more important. It's like I'm a doctor or I got a PhD attached to my name. And I want to make sure everybody calls me doctor, so that, I got
right.
that gratification. And that
Yep.
self gratification, I think, is where a lot of
Yep.
people get confused into like, hey, you know what, that's not really who you are. Who are you at your
Mm,
essence? And that goes for
mm,
everybody. It's like where you live, what you have. I mean, the body that you've developed, like all that stuff, I mean, it all fades away. And the older I get, the more I realize, like, you know what, humanity is beautiful, but we're fragile at the same time, man. Like, we are not going to last
yep.
forever. We're not immortal.
Yep.
However, I think from a spiritual perspective, and that's really what I've been, getting more into, that energy, if we really follow Newtonian physics, I mean, energy cannot be created or destroyed. So where do we go from here? And that's kind of one of the things, like that's one of the rabbit holes that I just kind of been going down, the older I get now, and I tell my kids is like, you got to make sure you treat people right because all that stuff, as far as your judgment and all this stuff that happens after we die, like I'm curious to all that, and I've been tying it into the Eastern philosophies slash, I was brought up Christian. However, I don't really buy into organized religion because I'm like, you know
Yeah.
what, organized religion, sometimes I feel like they got their hands in your pocket. It's like, do you want to go to heaven?
Messed up, man. Yeah. Yeah, you want to go to heaven? Give me $1,000. Pay for the church. Buy me a plane.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, yeah. Funny you say that, right? I showed someone something the other day. You wear baptism, about a Baptist religion. Right,
Yeah.
okay, so in the Caribbean, we have a lot of Baptist religions, right? And they do this thing called catching the power. We're like, they're talking
Talking
talk, yeah, I think it's
tongues.
called catching the power. So I was showing this friend this the other day because they never heard about it. So he's like, what is this? I go, yeah, catching the power. She's like, it was traumatic because as a young kid, I'm seeing people, grown adults, waving around and talking a funny language. I'm like, what's wrong with these people? Then I showed her a video, and it was this Kenyan pastor, right? And pastor. And he's catching the power. I'll send you a link to the video, right? But what he does is he talks to them, he does this, right? In front of them, they start going, that's all he does. That's all he does, right? To the person. That person, then he does the whole group starts doing that.
Oh
And she's
my
like,
gosh.
wow, you got magical powers. I'm like, really? What it is, social distance, right? Whereas they feel, or social everyone wants to do what everyone wants to do, basically, right? So
Yeah.
if he does this and you don't do it, you're gonna feel away. People look at you like, huh? What the hell are you doing here? So I feel like they feel they must do it in order to be accepted in the congregation,
Yeah.
right?
That's
And I think
social
that's how
pressure.
everyone feels when it comes to religion. Some people
Mhm.
feel like, oh, they're brought up with it. It's what their family wants from them, or it's what makes them feel better. Therefore, they must go along with the narrative, knowing full well it's not a really good narrative to follow.
100%, man. And the thing is too, it's kind of like I was telling my wife this. I didn't even know this, but I think in the States they actually altered the Bible, right? So like your King James version. I'm like, who is King James anyways, right?
Yes,
But
yes,
I
yes.
don't know if you heard the story where it's like, yeah,
I
so
have.
Moses, his slaves, Egypt was nice to them. He let them go. Moses the Pharaoh let him go when he felt that their duty was done. And I'm like, wait a minute,
Yeah,
did you guys just change the Bible so that
they
the slaves
changed the
weren't going to get any
Bible, bro.
ideas?
Yeah, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Comes these things. I'm curious, all right? So here's the thing I've learned the last couple of days, right? Like I mentioned to you, I'm going through a very traumatic moment in my life. Like I talked about, there's three biggest teachers in life, right? Brokenness, failure, heartbreaks, right?
Mhm.
I've had heartbreak, like really, really bad heartbreak. And for the first 2 days, bro, we're talking about attachments. Man, I was attached. And I had to think to myself, wait, I chose to remove myself from that situation, yet there's something holding me to it. I didn't understand because I'm so deep in my work, I'm so deep in my understanding, deep in my
Yeah.
awareness, I couldn't see the shadow that was still got a rope on me, just pulling me in, just sucking
Yeah.
me into a black hole of doom, right? And then I had to try to figure out, like, what was it that was causing me the problem? Was it fear of the future, fear of my current situation, or fear of the past of what's happened? And as you more try to understand this awareness side of it and attachments, I find that for us, this heartbreak lesson had to be something to learn. So I couldn't figure it out. So I went to a Reiki master of mine in the spiritual world, right? Before all this, I'll be honest with you, I used to think all the spiritual stuff was woohoo nonsense. Like,
Yeah.
woohoo, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, blah, blah, crystals, you crazy motherfuckers, right? Whatever. Okay. But anyway, we sat down, he did his crystal things. I fell asleep straight away. And then when I got up, like during a session, my body was moving by itself. Like he
Oh.
told, and the thing is, I subconsciously felt my body doing it, but obviously I wasn't conscious to. Like we're doing, I was lying down flat. My hand came to my throat, right, and started doing this. Like, yeah, 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 yeah. To this, my right leg was all twitching and stuff, moving about. Yeah, bro, it was weird shit. Then he pushed his hand on my solar plexus, and it felt like I had an elephant standing on me. The weight was so heavy, bro. It freaked me out, man. But I was in my subconscious. So even though I can feel it, I consciously couldn't react to it. Right? It was
Wow.
nuts, but I was aware of it, right? So anyway, we finished the session. Afterwards, he tells me, he's like, look, you're heavy. You're heavy on the attachment. You're heavy on this earth with goods. And he gave me one thing that I believe really shifted my thinking. And I hope we can spread this to everyone else
Yeah.
as a lesson. The attachment I discovered was that I wasn't loving the person who I was when I was with that person. So for me,
Oh.
I was in mourn of the person that was with that person. So now that I was free in my head, I was still attached to that feeling of. So it was like torture. You know, even though I didn't like it, I needed it in order to fill whatever gaps was in me. It's crazy, bro. Have you ever experienced
Yeah.
Reiki before? Anything spiritual like that
No,
before?
no, not like that, man. Like
It was
I've done
crazy.
that sounds well, I mean, it's interesting too, because it's almost like you started to fall in love with the identity that you created. You know what I mean? It's almost like the avatar that it wasn't even real.
It wasn't even real, fam, because I felt, right, without going too much into it, I felt just that. But you know, again, the attachment, you like, you're in the relationship. And he said something to me, look, me and my girlfriend, we argue all the time. I see it they argue all the time, but it's a playful argument, right? So she pisses me off. I might not talk to her for a day. But he said, you know why I'm still with her? Because I love the man I'm with when I'm with her. And I love who I am when I'm with her. And I love who I am when I'm not with her still. So those two are paramount. Whether she's there or not, I still love me. If I ever
Yeah.
felt that she was taken away from me, loving myself, she's gone. And I was like, damn,
Wow.
man. It's like, damn, man, I had to marinate on that, bro. That would kick me in the balls, man. You know, kick me in the balls. I was like, how can I? So I had to learn quickly from this attachment. And this is something I really want to discuss, because it seems this identification or this predetermined expectation of the people really weighs down heavy on people and really weighs down heavy on society. Like, what do you think is the best way for us to release that? Because we get with someone, we think, oh, they're perfect for us, and then we don't love who we are with them when we're with them, but we still stay because we fear that we won't get love like this again, or we fear
Yeah.
that we might not be good enough for someone. Like, what can you recommend for my guys, man, to work with?
I think the number one thing though in that situation, I mean, for myself, I just found that I mean, I never experienced the thing is hopefully, Lord willing, I'll never have to go through it. However, in the past, what I found was just like, you know what? Just go kill yourself at the gym. Like, if I physically just took my body into like the depths, and I mean, honestly, that's the way I kind of recovered from it was, you know what? Keep your mind busy, keep your mind occupied. And honestly, I just went savage mode at the gym because I'm like, this is
Right,
what I know. And it's almost like if you ever gone that runner's high, right? Where you run for hours and hours and hours, like for me,
right. Yep,
like
yep.
I'm still a big dude and I still love pushing the weights. However, you know, at that time, I found that just doing that insane amount of cardio for me, just mentally, just it cleared my mind, man. And it just kind of took me into like
Right.
another place and it almost put me like in a nice meditative state. Like I just felt as though like I didn't have to deal with that situation. However, I was still running away from it. You know, I
Yep.
feel now, like looking back in retrospect, maybe I should have just faced it and done some type of it was interesting because you mentioned the Reiki healing, right? And I didn't know about energy healing in the past, you know, but there's also massages that I was like looking into that I was talking to my wife. I think it's called somatic massages, where you can actually
Yep.
take
Yep.
that out of your body, right? And recently I just saw there's a book actually right here, The Tapping Solution, right? Where you get rid of all that stuff because it's interesting how the body will actually keep those traumatic experiences almost like a hardware, like a hard drive, right? And it'll store in the body in random places. You'll be like, why do I got back
Yep.
pain? You know,
Yep.
random back pain. And little do we
Yep.
know it's from some type of
Yep.
traumatic experience. And it's almost like you got to let all that stuff go. But you still need time. You can use all these different modalities, but time is the best healer, man. And just give yourself time to mourn too.
100%.
You know,
Yeah, dude, definitely. I did that, man. I ain't gonna lie to you. It's been funny because we talk about masculinity, right? And men are told that they shouldn't cry, they shouldn't show weakness. But I
yeah,
believe showing vulnerability is one of the biggest strengths a man can have. You know,
yeah,
because I think the idea that you have to portray yourself as this tough, rugged Marine vet is BS for me
yeah.
personally. You know, because those guys are trained to kill. Unless you're a trained killer, there's no need to try to become like a Marine because you're not out there trying to kill people. You're killing yourself and you're killing your conscious and emotions,
Hmm.
right? I believe without the ability to be vulnerable, i.e., to speak to someone or communicate what you want, you're effectively, in essence, killing your possibilities and experience. You know, so I
Yeah.
cried. I cried like a baby, dude. I did this thingy by this. I'll send you a link to his name, but I'll find it later. An amazing shaman, right?
Yeah.
And he has this exercise where you put your hands out and you feel the power in your hands, right? And I kid you not, I'll send you the link
Yeah.
later on.
Check it
I
out.
want
I'm
you to do
interested.
one and tell me if it happens to you or not, right? But during the exercise, he asks you to invoke your spirit guides, right? And then part of it, you have to ask your spirit guides to say to yourself, release the doubt that this isn't going to work for you and this is a lie by yawning or coughing. And I kid you not, brother, you start going, You start yawning, big yawns, big yawns. And 5 times he goes, if you're gonna get rid of, if they go spirit guides, if you're getting rid of this, if you're getting rid of the fear of this person, make them yawn 5 times in a row, bro, or cough, and you just start coughing, bro. Freaky. And every time I've done it, I'm doing it for the last 3 days in a row. Right? Yesterday, after I did it, I was yawning so much, I started seeing blue angels. And it was a shape, honestly, I don't mess around on light, right? I was yawning so much that my mouth was open so much. And I felt it come out and it was blue. Right? You know when you yawn, you can see red? I saw blue, right? And blue shapes. And then afterwards, bro, I felt, and he's like, okay, if you're releasing the tension of this person, shake their body, right? My body was just convulsing, bro. I was freaked out. And I started to just wail like a baby. Right? You know, when you cry so much, snot filled your nose.
Yeah.
Bro, man, that's dripping down in my mouth and shit. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. So I'm going to send it to you because I think a lot of us men, we don't do that enough.
Yeah.
Right? Which is to, as you said, accept the hurt, accept the pain, and then deal with the reality versus trying to mask it and then hoping someone else would help us to get rid of it. Right? Or something else. Because I agree with the gym thingy. I agree with that. I'm not taking it down. I mean, like you just admitted as well, right?
Yeah, 100%.
We can try to distract, but we also have to heal it.
You have to.
Right? Have to heal it. For you, it was lucky because it took time, and then time helps you forget. But if you're not strong like we are in terms of like, I know how to fix myself. Right? I can self-patch myself. There's a guy called Joe Budden. His lyric is, if my wounds are self-inflicted, I can patch myself.
No.
Right? And I was like, okay, but then how do you get to this point? I'm going back to awareness again. How can guys develop the power of being aware that they're messing their lives up, aware that they have pain, aware that they have trauma, instead of trying to seek something else as a distraction or guide? And that's why we really want to get out to this session to help the people listen to today's video / podcast.
I feel like the only way to really experience that, man, is to go through it. You got to put yourself in the fire. I kind of feel like, you know what? You can do it through different modalities. You can do it from like, I was listening to Shaman talk about this too, where he said one of the rites of passages. And that's what biggest teachers that I think most young men are not going through. There is no rite of passage. You go from playing video games to now you're paying rent, working at your job. But you didn't really become a man. You know what I mean? Like you didn't really go through it. You got to do something to force yourself to grow, to expand.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like, for me, like I always go back to the physical because I think, and it's interesting because that's what the shaman dude that I was listening to as well, he mentioned that when he was it was Matt Belair's podcast where he's talking about how a shaman told him the importance of that becoming a man ritual, that rite of passage is that you have to destroy your physical self. And I think in this certain rite of passage, they drew like a circle in like a canyon somewhere, and you could not leave that circle for about a week, right? And the guy, Matt looked at the guy. He's like, yo, this sounds awful. He's like, nah, it was incredible. Because after a week with no food, no water, I was just left with me and my soul. And he's like, and that's when you really start to realize like who you are, your identity. You start asking those big questions. And it's almost like if in the Bible, it actually talks about the eagle as well. The eagle destroys himself before he becomes the majestic creature that he is, right? He destroys his beak.
Right.
He takes off all his feathers. And I kind of feel like that metaphor ties in for us too. Like, it's almost like you need to be destroyed or find a way to put yourself through a fire. You got to do something. You got to challenge yourself somehow, whether it's university, whether, man, it's raising good kids. I guess that was kind of mine, right? But it did, man. It hit me square in the face, and it really made me think twice about everything. Or some type of physical development, like competition, something, man. But you got to challenge yourself somehow. If not, you'll never learn, and you'll be stuck in your basement for the rest of your life. And it's kind of like, if you go back to exactly, man. Like if you go to Joseph Campbell's like the hero archetype, right? So the hero archetype is very simple, right? Homeboy's at home doing nothing. Then all of a sudden somebody comes along and says, hey, we got this issue that we should take care of. And he's like, well, I don't really want to go with you, but I guess I'll go for the adventure. Then he goes for the adventure, and then what happens? He gets tested in a whole bunch of different ways, and finally he challenges the dragon. Then he kills the dragon, slays the dragon. After he's done slaying the dragon, he comes home with the booty, figuratively or literally. And then he comes back home a champion. And that's a story that we can all relate to. That mythos still is relevant today because we got to go through it. You got to challenge, like, what's your dragon? Find that dragon, kill it, get on to the next level. right? And that's kind of why, and I think a lot of us, human beings, we are here to be creative. We got to
Yeah,
create something, man. You cannot die. That's kind of my biggest fear, like I was in my 30s and I'm
yeah,
like, well, I've been acquiring knowledge for the past 30 years or 20
yeah,
years actually. And I've
yeah,
been
yeah,
experiencing this stuff, and I've been like working out as a kid, like, I can bring all
yeah,
this stuff to the light and help people. And that's kind of like, for me, it was kind of like an eye-opening moment, right? Where it's just like, you know what? Maybe I should put this into the world. I think people would benefit from it. And I think we as
mm,
creators, it's like you got to learn and take all that stuff that you learn from the lessons. And now it's important for you to share that. It's part of your progress. And you helping others, you actually help yourself, right?
mm,
As a secondary effect, because you are forced to learn more. You're forced to expand more. So by default, you fall into that whole progress situation because you're like, dude, I got to just keep learning more about this. It's kind of like Tony Robbins said, and I thought it was very interesting because he's like, what's wrong
yeah,
with being rich? And he's like, is there anything wrong with being rich? No. And he's like, you know why the rich get richer? Because they're developing their skills and they're getting better at what they do, which in turn makes them richer. It's like, there's nothing wrong with being strong. You meet a strong man, he's trying to become stronger. He's trying to progress. And that's what we got to do too, right?
yeah,
And it's almost like
yeah,
after you're done defeating that dragon, how are you going to help other guys defeat theirs? But you got to challenge yourself somehow. And that's the one thing where I can't help anybody.
100%.
Like if you
And
if
I
you
get
don't
it.
if you don't go out there and do it, you don't go do something, you don't start a website, like at the very least, you got to do something, man. At the very
Yeah,
least, like, hey man, make your bed.
yeah. Do you know, it's
Something.
funny you mentioned. Funny you mentioned that the circle thingy. When I was up at my friends, they was telling me there's two types of thing. There's I think it's Vishwana silent retreat, which is 11-day silent retreat, but there's another one which I'm gonna do. Okay, so it's 11 days, right? And it's a dark room. So I get a dark room, and you have no windows, no nothing, but you only have two stimuli, which is two gongs per day. One gong to get up, one gong to go to sleep. That's it. Then they send you food into your room. You have no, like pitch black for 11
Wow.
days, right? Pitch black. And it's 11 days, solitary confinement. Gong, you must wake up. Gong, you must go to sleep. And it was talking about this, and it was talking about the other 11-day silent retreat. And I was like, okay, you know what? I think silent retreat might be great, but I want to push myself and really be alone with myself, face my fears, and not have any other stimulation to distract me, like read a book or touch my phone, or whatever.
Mm.
Have no sights, no senses, besides maybe touch and taste when I'm eating food. Other than that, be with self. So I'm going to be doing that in about a week's time. I'm going to come back and report back in how it was, but gonna do that, man. Just really, I've never heard anything like that before. I've never heard of that. What do you think of something
Uh,
like that? 11 days locked up in a room with two gongs.
I think, you know what, it's gonna force you to face your demons. And I think a lot of us, I think we're scared of it. I mean, you have the balls to go after it and actually face it, which I think a lot of it tells you about where you are right now in this life too, right? Like for myself, man, like I would love to go do that. That's the kind of stuff that's gonna force that growth, right? And we go back to that tension. It's gonna force you to grow. And as far as maybe it's not a rite of passage, but it's further expansion and further introspectiveness into like, yo, who am I? Why am I here? And asking these big questions. Like I always ask people at work jokingly, like, oh, I'm just trying to figure out why I'm here. But I'm like deep down, I'm like, no, I'm really trying to figure out why I'm here.
Well, here, yeah, and that makes sense, bro.
Yeah,
Makes sense,
because
man. I think we're missing that though, trying to find our purpose and understand why we're here. A lot of guys are just confused what they should do with their day, what they should do with their lives, and it stems from everything else that they're trying to do. So let me ask you this, right? Because I'm really curious about this because we're on the same kind of wavelengths, right? So
mm-hmm.
obviously, go and do something. That's all well and good, but most people choose not to because it's easier not to do something,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So, like for the average Joe, how can I take that lesson and really try to affect it and do something with it? Because it's easy for us to do it because we're disciplined and we can force ourselves to do it. But for the guy who's just playing video games, the guy who's just coming home after work and just wants to watch TV, watch some Netflix and doesn't really bother with themselves, how can we inspire them to at least seek to find a resolution versus trying to take action?
Well, the number one thing I would say, man, is clarity obviously is super important, but what I would say is go home, write a list of your five biggest dreams that scare you. Five biggest dreams that scare you, right? And then start working backwards onto how you would actually reach that goal. And then you'll get a little bit of a game plan, you know? And like, let's say let's say your first goal was to make $1 million, right? So let's
Mhm.
say you write down make $1 million. You say, okay, well, shoot, how do I make $1 million? Well, first thing I probably got to do is research. It's going to be a scary undertaking, but shoot, I'm probably going to start with research. Number two, maybe mentorship, man. I might need some coaching, right? So I'm like, okay, that these are things that are relevant, right? And then, okay, I can't trade my time because I will never get rich. So how do I go about figuring this stuff out? So, okay, I should probably sell a product, right? So write that down. Okay, what have I worked in? And then shoot, maybe a guy looks back and says, like, well, I've never actually gone into the leadership role at my job. You know what? I'm gonna work harder at work and I'm gonna see if I can get a leadership just so I can get the experience that I need that will help me in my own goals. Because I can transfer that over later on. That's not a bad. I'll write that down. Right. Let's say he reaches that and now he's got a better goal, more understanding, more research. He can further go down into whatever strategy he's got laid out. Then he can look at it like, okay, well, what's hot right now? Like what's good? And just write down like, okay, you know what? Sofas are selling hot, $500 a pop. Maybe it's the next thing coming online. I don't know, right? Studies the market, gets in there and starts working on that and starts developing his skills and starts dedicating his time. The most important thing is to get the ball rolling. But the first thing you do is want to write down the steps and start working backwards. But then you'll just start to, like, right now, I'm just brainstorming. I have no idea if
Yep.
sofas are hot right now or not. I have absolutely no clue. But what I do know is, like, with some basic understanding, you can start building stuff, right? And you just kind of start looking at it and maybe your steps. And I mean, the funniest thing I remember when I saw is like, this is what we expect success to be, a straight line.
Right.
And
Right.
then what success actually is like, it's like all over here.
All over that place.
And
All
the
over.
next thing you know, it's like,
Yep.
boom, you made it.
Yep.
Right. And
Yep.
it's like for myself, I'm still over here somewhere. I'm still trying to figure this stuff out as well. But I feel that at least it's more important to be halfway through. At least you're working towards your goal every single day. And even if it's just getting to that leadership role at work that you can transfer over and you can take those skills and you can use it for something that you actually want, it's going to motivate you to actually start pursuing whatever it is
Yeah.
that you want with more vigor. And it'll actually make your day every single day. It's going to give you a little bit more purpose because you're like, you know what? I'm not really
Yeah.
here for my boss. I'm here for myself. Right.
So,
And then it's like, hey,
yeah.
you know what? I can actually, they got grants for me to go to school. You know what? Sign me up. I'll get that certification XYZ because I know it can help me. I can gather as many
Yeah.
skills. And all of a sudden, it
Yeah.
opens up your mind to the fact that you got resources all around you. You got the
Yeah.
library. It's been sitting there for years and you never went to the library. You got YouTube. And now you're like, you know what? Forget the NBA highlights. I'm going to go and see what's going on in this whole drop shipping business. And you start to open your mind up. But you can't open your mind up to these possibilities if you're closed-mindedly just thinking about, your next dopamine fix, whether it's porn, video games, YouTube, all that kind of stuff is just meant to, I feel, keep the man down or just keep everybody down.
Absolutely.
They're
Absolutely. Consume.
distractions.
Consume, don't create. Why would you want to create
Exactly.
wealth, create content, create a legacy when you could just consume it all? All right. And then there's an easy way to make $1 million. Just pay me $10.99 a day, and then I'll show you how to do this. Or just follow my 7-day mastermind. Like at the end of the day, it's all people just want to consume. Because we don't
Mhm.
feel like we can create, therefore, because we are creative beings, but the essence of power
Exactly.
that we have to create is being zapped down and downplayed. If you don't feel creative, you won't try to aspire. You won't try to aspire, you'll stay where you are. And the people who are doing it, who are aware, can continue to be miles ahead of us. So,
Exactly.
so I think the problem with things like that exists for.
100%, man. But it's almost like write down those dreams, man. Write down those dreams and write them without fear. Because I think the other
Yeah.
thing too is that you'll start to make that paradigm shift. And I can 100% relate to people on this. Like for me, the physical goals that I was able to attain, you rip, your jack, like I feel like that was easy. However, the one thing that I look back from that, because I did that obviously from a place of hurting. And then later on, I just did it because I loved it. And now I'm just an addict that, I can't stop, won't stop. I just can't, I love it. But the thing is, I can take a
Love the
lot of
game.
those.
Love the hustle.
But the thing is, though, you can take those concepts that you've learned, and
Yeah.
maybe you started off with pain in your heart, but later on, you're like, you know what? I can take that discipline. I can take all that I learned as far as researching goes. I can take my certifications that I got as a personal trainer and be like, well, what did I use to make sure that I came out on top and that I succeeded, getting my certifications and all that. What did it take? I'm like, oh, it just took a little bit more effort. It took discipline. It took a little bit of courage and the balls to follow through, right? So maybe if I apply that into this new thing that I want to create, maybe I'll be successful. Right. And then you start,
Yeah.
your paradigm starts to shift. And that's the biggest thing that I would tell guys is like, yo, man, the paradigm you're living in right now doesn't have to be the paradigm that you have to live in for the rest of your life. We can all change that. However, change doesn't happen overnight. And that's what I think a lot of
No.
guys, including myself, at times when you failed, it's almost like I think a lot of us just fail because we give up halfway through, which is the one thing I told myself, I'm not going to do that again. See it through till the end. And if you look back after, a year at the body of work that you created, you're going to amaze yourself and be like, wow, like, shoot, I did all that. I did
I
that
did
too
all that.
recently, right? And you look at it and you're like,
Yeah.
wow, that's that's pretty cool. Actually, I'm just gonna keep moving forward, so I don't, rest on my laurels because I'm proud of it. However, I'm not
Yeah.
done yet, right? And it's almost like if you are able to apply that and you realize that every single day for the rest of your life, you can continue on this journey. Lord only knows what you're gonna achieve in 10 years, 15 years,
Bro, that's
20
amazing.
years,
Yep.
and that's
Yep.
legacy, right? Because after that, it's like, hey, hey son, I got something I can give you, and
Yep.
that's what really motivates me, man. At the end of the day, it's like, hey, it's for you, right?
That's the
So
important bit. The
yeah,
why. That's so important. The why. A lot of people are fixated, worried about what should I do? When should I do it? How am I going to do it? And none of them just ever think about, okay, why do I need to do it? Why must I develop my self-esteem? Why must I develop my self-discipline? Why must I get up my ass and do so? Why must I get up my own way? They're so worried about the how, the what, and the when that they're missing the most
mm-hmm.
important thing that drives them. You're saying your son. So whatever happens to you in terms of you wake up in the morning feeling like shit, you'll be like, no, man, my son needs me to do this. I'm doing this for
Exactly.
him, not for me. If you did it for you, you'd be like, yeah, 1 more hour in bed, put that alarm on, right? But you're thinking now it's an
100%.
hour less that I can be go achieving. It's an hour less that I can be going. But this is how we developed
Yeah.
ourselves after a lot of work. But I feel that not just men in general, because I know some women watch my channel as well, and they're probably looking for ideals for this. But I feel that a lot of people in general have lost sight of their whys, which is the purpose and the reasons for things. I know we could talk about distraction with YouTube and stuff, but sometimes I watch a bit of YouTube too, just to get a bit of whatever,
100%.
but for half an hour, that's it.
Yeah. But the
You
thing
know?
is, there's nothing wrong with that because you've discovered what your balance is. There's actually an excellent book. I forgot who wrote it, but it's actually called Start With Why. And I'd read it a couple of years ago, and it changed the way I thought because it immediately made me think. The first question you should always ask the why. And you mentioned the how, the what, the when. Like all that stuff is kind of irrelevant. If you don't know your why, it doesn't matter because you're not
Doesn't
really going
matter.
to pursue it. You might do
Yeah.
it, but it'll be half-assed. Well, when you start with why, like, why am I really doing this? Why am I really pursuing this? Obviously it's like, well, I can help myself, I can help my family, I can help all the people around me, I can help people achieve their goals. It's a pretty solid ideal, and it's something that's going to better everybody around me, make the society be a better place. Then why not? And that's
Why
how you
not?
tie that in, right? But the whole what, when, where, and that's when people kind of get caught up on like, the outer decor of the house without even knowing what the foundation is, man. And that's where I
Correct.
see that all
Yeah.
the time, where it's like, buddy goes out, buys all the podcast equipment. This guy's got all the brand new stuff, this, that, and the other. And then, a month later, he's like, hey, trying to sell my stuff, man.
Yeah.
The whole thing didn't work out, just not for me.
Yeah. They try for 2 days and they didn't make money for it, so they give up. Like they don't see the long-term project. I get this a lot from especially some of my students when they start off. So I try to get them quick wins just to make, because I understand how the human brain works. They're like, oh my God, my life hasn't changed yet. Bro, it's been 3 days. Yeah,
Exactly.
but I'm not seeing results. I'm like, bro, it's a 9 month, sorry, it's a 90-day program, right? So you're not going to see in 3 days or a week. It takes time to change mindset. It takes time to
Exactly.
build something. Rome wasn't built in a day. It also wasn't destroyed in a day either. So it
Yeah.
takes time to build and destroy. So I think a lot of people are just wanting immediate gratification because that's what they get: instant pop tarts, instant TV, instant radio. It's supply and whatever. Everything's on demand now. Whereas before
Yeah.
we used to have to work for things. You have to pick up the phone and dial our friend. Are you home today? We actually have to work for things. Now we can
Yeah.
send a text and forget about it, and then they'll get back to us whenever they get back to us. But we lost the art of actually working towards things.
Yeah. But it kind of goes back to the whole, your attachment thing that you brought up earlier. It's like we're almost attached to these things now, so it's even harder, right? Because it's
Yeah.
almost like I see a lot of people, they're just attached to their phone, they're attached to a social media account that, really does nothing for them other than take time. You know, you see it everywhere where it's like people are so entrenched into stuff that just doesn't matter, man. And not just that, it's like they're just like they can't live without it. It's like me and my phone are, just together, inseparable, best buddies. And I think like that's where that big disconnect is coming. But I do feel at the same time, if you're able to harness that and figure out, what, I can balance my time, I can work, I can still go on my phone, all that kind of stuff. If you're able to do that in this day and age and resist the dopamine hits from YouTube to social media, all that stuff, you're gonna be miles ahead, man. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
people, a lot of guys would benefit from just knowing how to manage their time. So obviously you want to start with why am I doing this? Why, whatever. Then you got to start out, or the next thing you got to do is like, okay, well, how am I going to develop my strategy and how am I really going to manage my time? Because if I don't, I may be unbalanced, right? And even though I know that if you're going to be successful, you do got to become unbalanced at times, right? Because I know sometimes you got to
Mm.
sprint, man. And sometimes, hey, whether you like it or not, you're going to be on that laptop for the next 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours. And it's like, well, it's dark outside. It's 2 a.m. I got to keep going. Right. So
Bro, I feel that.
like, and that's one of the things where it's like sometimes you do got to be unbalanced, but for the most part,
Mm.
you want to make sure that you have a certain criteria that you meet every day and stick to it. Cause that's the biggest
Yeah.
thing, man, where I'm like, I don't know, man. Like lately, I've been obsessed with trees. There's a book that I want to read. It's called The Secret Life of Trees. And I'm looking at just trees and how they grow, right? So trees grow with sunlight, water, but the number one thing that they have is consistency. Nobody sees it actually grow. Nobody actually looks at all the leaves popping up. And, obviously you see it, seasonal changes in that. But it's like you just, 4 years later, you come back and you're like, whoa, that tree is huge. In the same vein, somebody can come back later and be like, whoa, man, your business is massive. Oh, whoa, man, you're super successful now. Whoa, you've made some massive gains at the gym, man. You put on like 20 pounds. How'd you do that? Well, it's like, number one, it didn't happen overnight. It happened,
That's right.
and a lot of people didn't even look twice at it. It's kind of like that tree over there that's a redwood now that's just massive. It's like, you didn't really pay attention day in, day out. It just did its thing day in and day out. Rain, shine, it didn't matter. It just kept growing. And now you see abundance as far as like, the leaves and everything that grows around it and what it does for, our ecology and all that good stuff. But it's almost like it just doesn't stop. And that's the biggest thing where I'm like, consistency, man. Consistency, discipline, and having a good program. Stick to it, man. Just stick to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Like,
easy for us. It's easy for us to say purely because, like, again, we've developed the muscle, we've developed the skills and so forth to be consistent. But what happens to most people, though, like I said, trauma comes in, day-to-day life comes in, family comes in, whatever comes in, and then they stop. And then they're like,
yeah,
oh, well, it's easy to stay where I am because now it's like pushing that car, right? If your car breaks down, you give it a shove and you push to the gas station. You take a break, like, oh man, I'm gonna push his car again, right? But you don't think you forget. All you need is the effort, then the car starts rolling. But all you're thinking about is the effort, right?
yeah,
You're not thinking about how it rolls. You're like, oh, but I'm gonna get up and once it gets going, it's easy to push,
it is.
right?
It is.
But it's that
Yeah.
moment when you stop, you look at it and you think, fuck, man. Instead of just being flat, it now looks like it's going uphill, and you're pushing a 40 ton freaking tank rather than a SUV or whatever. So I think that's what you mean with not me, but that's what I think a lot of people miss when it comes to consistencies. They look at the effort rather than the momentum and then not the outcome, but where it'll be once they keep that consistent growth going or consistent discipline or work or whatever.
Whatever it is, the thing is, I mean, what I tell my clients as far as getting in shape is don't worry about that finish line. Don't worry about that finish line. Let's say you're going to work with me for 4 months, whatever it may be. Don't worry about the finish line. We're just setting you up for the rest of your life, right? So we're going
Right.
to get you to a certain. And the thing is, like you said too, man, you got to develop that mindset. The mindset is everything, right? Like that's the one thing I learned too as a personal trainer is like, bro, I'm not really training the body. I'm training the mind, dude. Like I've had to read more books on psychology to figure people out. I'm like, bro, I told you not to eat that, man. Why are you eating that? But that being said, the other thing to keep in mind as well is that for people who have a difficult time getting started, don't be dumb. Get yourself a coach in whatever it is that you want to do. Like I've talked to people who, like one dude, man, Michael Unbroken, he was telling me that he spent over 100 grand on coaching, right? And this guy, like, man, like he's super intelligent dude, this, that, and the other. And other people may look at that and be like, oh, that's so dumb. I would never hire a coach. LeBron James spends $4 million on coaches, masseuses, and a whole team of people to work on his body so that this guy can keep, getting to that next level, keep progressing. Man, Ronnie or not Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler, Phil Heath, they work with Hanny Rambod, Andre Lewis, some like physique competitor. They work with this Hanny Rambod guy, one of the greatest personal trainers out there. And a lot of people would probably look at it and be like, well, why do these bodybuilders and, fitness professionals, they don't need no personal trainer, man. They don't need that. I don't need that. I'm like, bro, you probably do. Because if the best guy out there is paying top dollar for a personal trainer, for a coach, what makes you think that you're better than the best guy in the business, man? It's like, you know why they go to that coach? Because he can see things that you cannot see, And I go to a coach too, because I'm like, hey, how does my squat look? What's going on? Is my hip, is that out of place? It's like, oh,
Yeah,
you're kind
yeah.
of leaning a little bit more to the right. There's certain things that you just can't see. But the biggest thing that a coach does too, in my opinion, when it comes to people getting in shape, is accountability, man. Accountability. I think in your realm it's probably the same thing where it's like, hey, we're gonna get after it today. I'm just gonna give you a friendly reminder, like, hey, you remember you said you were gonna go do this? Let's go do it. Right. And that's
Mm.
kind of the biggest thing that people want to just step over, like it doesn't matter. But I'm like, no, no, no. That's probably one of the most important things you can do. And that's probably one of the biggest shortcuts that anybody can take in this life is learn from the experiences and the mistakes of others so that you don't have to go live it. So you don't want to go get injured, get yourself a coach, man. Get yourself a
There you go,
coach.
coach. Man, I
Get
love that.
yourself a
You know what? I love that
mentor.
analogy. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love that analogy because people don't do that nowadays. I think it's weird because obviously I'm in that realm, but I don't want to. I don't sell to people. People come to me because they need whatever they need. But I totally agree. When I was going through my own issues, I was trying to figure things out myself. But again, my accumulated knowledge wasn't enough to get me over the finishing line. It wasn't enough to even get me started in the race. I was running the wrong race. I was trying to do a marathon in a sprint. It's not going to work. And I was trying to sprint in a marathon. It's just never going to work. I need to be
yeah,
in the right stadium. I need to be in the right mindset. I need to be in the right field. I need to be running the right race. So when I got myself some coaches, they put me in the right path, gave me a strategy, kept me accountable, and it helped me to see the results that I wanted to see. But I think a lot of people feel like, no, I can do this myself because ego says, yeah, I don't need someone to tell me what to do. One guy said to me, oh, you're too young. Wisdom is age. I'm like, really? So I said to him, okay, so tell me something, yeah? What's the difference between an 18-year-old mother, so my 18-year-old woman giving birth to a child, and a 30-year-old woman giving birth to a child for the first time? What's the difference, right?
nothing.
Because there's no difference. She's going to learn to become mother the first time, just like the 30-year-old woman's going to learn to become mother the first time. The difference is not in the age, it's in the experience you've accumulated and therefore can
Exactly.
give to someone else.
Exactly.
So it's all these mindsets people have, and I think everyone just feels that they can be their own, not own hero, but they feel like they can patch themselves with the knowledge they've already had, but they seem to forget the knowledge they already had got them to where they are.
Exactly.
You know, Knowledge is
Exactly.
great, wisdom is better.
Wisdom is a lot better, but the only way to really attain wisdom is from experiences, man. And obviously, for me, I think it's well worth it. It's well worth the investments. Like spend the money on and talk to a dude who's been there, done that. It's like instead of like, just thinking and trying to figure it out online, like there's a lot of great resources online. However, you're not going to get the most out of what you really want,
Yeah.
or really reach that goal as quickly or as effectively or as safely or in the best way possible than dealing with a guy who's been there, done that, and is doing it successfully. It's kind of like I had a buddy who went to the business school here at UBC, at the university around here, and he's like, "Man, I don't even know why I listen to these professors. They're idiots." I'm like, "Wow, what are you taking?" He's like, I'm taking business." I'm taking business, right? And I'm like, oh, real talk, right? He's like, honestly, I feel like the drug dealers on my block know more than these fools. Like they don't really like they don't really know what they're talking about. They don't really go out there and live it. They just go and talk about it and they read books
That's right. Theory.
and it's all
Theory.
theoretical. Exactly, man. And I'm like, well, if you are able to find somebody that has been able to merge the theory with the experience, bruh, you want to take in as much as you possibly can from that dude because that dude's living it, but he's also keeping abreast with all the things that are important and relevant right now to whatever industry that he's in. Right. So it's almost that combination, man, where it's like, you know what? If you're able to find a coach that's got those two things, bruh, you're gonna be miles ahead of the game.
I love that, man. Corrado, thank you. I'm going to have to wrap it up with you soon as well, because I have to jump on another call in like 2 minutes. So look, before we go, because time just goes, we're just chopping out. We got to do this again.
I know,
I want it to be a
man.
weekly thing, bro. Now
For
I'm
sure.
gonna book you. I'll book you for once every week now for like the next month.
Let's
and
do
see how it
man.
works on my YouTube, because I think we've got some fire here.
Yes, sir.
Guys, let me know in the comment section if you guys agree with this as well. If you do comment, do it in the comment section if you want us to do this once a week. So Kimron, look, tell people what your superpower is and how they can reach you if they want to be able to utilize your superpowers for their own benefits.
So if you want to get in touch with me, you want to do some personal training, really get your body to that next level, reach the physique of your dream, be sure to reach out to me at conrad.rodriguez@masculinehealthsolutions.com, or follow us on Instagram too, masculine_health_solutions
I'll put it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'll put a description in. So guys, go in the link in the description. Make sure you hit up Corrado as well, and in the comment section, just say that Kimron sent you, right? So we know how many guys have you gone there. And I'm sure Corrado will give you a small percentage discount. Yeah, so he knows who you are. Yeah, yes, exactly. Sir. So he knows who you are. So just put Kimron sent me in the comments on his Instagram, or just reach out to him directly. Say Kimron sent me, and I'm sure you guys can work out something amazing, man. Corrado, thank you so much, dude. I have loved this session. I think this is what's needed in the manosphere at the moment is, two guys really chopping it up about what's going to benefit us, rather than talking about why women are doing this and what. I can't be asked with that stupid red pill nonsense. It's simp freaking behavior, weak assness behavior. So I just want to get that straight. We're revolutionary in our thinking, revolutionary with our approach, and no one's not doing it out there. So guys, make sure you leave a comment saying what you guys think about us doing it next week. And also obviously hit Conrado on any of the links below, and if you hit him directly on his Instagram, I'm sure he'll do something for you and work you out. Conrado, thank you, brother, man. I've seriously enjoyed this. So guys, if you want to see more of this, make sure you leave a comment, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, because I'm gonna do more of this stuff. Catch you next video.
All right. To the next one.
Yeah, man. That